There are moments in pop culture that pass like sparks, brief, bright, quickly forgotten. And then there are moments that split a career in half. For Madonna, the most controversial moment of her life didn't happen in a studio or in a carefully staged performance. It happened in the space between expectation and rebellion. The moment when she crossed a line the world never expected her to cross. It was 1992, the year she released Erotica in the notorious sex book. A combination so bold, so unapologetic, that it sent shockwaves through the industry. Cameras captured the surface of the scandal, the headlines, the protests, the late-night talk shows dripping with outrage. But what the world never saw was what happened off-camera. The silence that settled into the room she walked through, the tension in the air when the lights went out, the weight of standing alone at the center of a cultural firestorm. Madonna's fortune, already soaring past $60 million at the time, offered no shield against the fury. Critics called her reckless. Moralists called her dangerous. Even fans struggled to understand her. But inside her home, the scene was different. Dim lamps glowing over stacks of photographs, pages of concepts scattered across tables. Her voice low and steady as she insisted she would not apologize for the woman she had chosen to be. This was the moment that tried to break her. The moment that exposed every nerve behind the world's most carefully constructed persona. And yet, beneath the backlash, a question lingered. What truth was she trying to reveal? And why did the world fear it so much? Long before controversy became her shadow, Madonna was simply a girl from Michigan with a hunger sharper than the circumstance. Born in 1958, she grew up in a household marked by discipline, Catholic rituals, and the early death of her mother. A loss that carved a hollow space she would spend decades trying to fill. In that silence, ambition took root. At 19, with $40 in her pocket and a fire in her chest, she arrived in New York City, a place that felt both dangerous and divine. She slept on friends' couches, worked in diners, danced in cramped studios with peeling walls. But even then, people noticed her. Not just the beauty, not just the talent, but the defiance, the insistence on being seen, heard, and never controlled. By 1983, when her debut album hit the clubs, something indescribable happened. Her voice, airy yet commanding, threaded itself into the nightlife of Manhattan. Her image, lace gloves, crucifixes, boyish hair, rewrote the rules of pop stardom. Then came Like a Virgin, True Blue, Vogue, Like a Prayer. Era after era, she didn't just follow trends. She bent the world around her. Audiences didn't merely listen, they surrendered. Her concerts became rituals. Her choreography, scripture. Her reinvention, relentless. Madonna was not building a career. She was building a mythology, brick by shimmering brick. Yet even in her brightest moments, there were fractures. Whispers that she was too bold, too sexual, too political. She carried those accusations like invisible weights, each one pushing her further toward the boundary she would eventually shatter in 1992. Behind the applause, she felt the tension growing, the widening gap between the woman she was becoming and the expectations the world placed on her. She had tasted glory, but the taste was bittersweet, because with every reinvention, she moved closer to a truth she had never been allowed to express openly. And as the spotlight intensified, another story, darker, more dangerous, began writing itself behind the scenes. 3. By the early 1990s, fame no longer shimmered around Madonna. It pressed against her like a tightening grip. She was at the peak of global domination. Platinum albums, sold-out tours, magazine covers that turned her face into an icon, recognized in every corner of the world. But behind the flash of cameras and the roar of arenas, she carried a restlessness that fame could not soothe. Her personal life had grown complicated, relationships strained under the weight of her ambition, friendships blurred with rivalry, and every decision she made was dissected with both fascination and hostility. The world adored her confidence, but it refused to accept her autonomy. Every time she challenged a norm, critics circled like vultures, waiting to see if this would be the moment she pushed too far. Inside her New York apartment, the atmosphere was starkly different from the dazzling performances she gave. Soft lamps cast gold shadows across the wooden floors. Manuscripts, photographs, and bold artistic concepts lay scattered on tables. She paced often at night, thinking, sketching, rewriting ideas that most artists would never dare to explore. The quiet rooms bore witness to a woman preparing for war. A war against censorship, against moral panic, against the very framework that tried to reduce her to a stereotype. People close to her recalled how her conversations grew sharper during these years. She spoke about freedom, ownership, sexuality as identity rather than spectacle. She questioned why women were punished for claiming their bodies, why society accepted desire only when it was filtered through male imagination. The more she spoke, the clearer her next steps became, and the more she realized they would come with a cost. She could sense the tension building, like a storm waiting just beyond the skyline. The world thought it knew her. The world thought she would never risk everything. The world was wrong. For beneath the glamour, beneath the rehearsed smiles and curated appearances, Madonna was quietly edging toward her most defiant creation, a moment that would alter the trajectory of her legacy forever. C'est pendant ces dernières années que le silence s'est épaissi, annonçant l'orage qui allait éclater. It was the autumn of 1992, a night charged with anticipation. New York City pulsed beneath a sky thick with late-night electricity as journalists, critics, and curious onlookers crowded outside a private venue where Madonna would unveil the projects that would ignite one of the greatest scandals in pop culture history. Inside, dim spotlights washed the room in amber, bouncing off metal frames and glossy prints that lined the walls. Then the doors opened. Then the flashbulbs erupted. Then the world changed. Erotica, the album. Sec, the book. Two creations released within hours of each other, merging into a single cultural shockwave. The cameras captured her entrance, poised, unbothered, luminous in her confidence. But what they didn't capture was the atmosphere off camera, the whispering tension among her team, the uneasy murmurs from executives who feared what was coming. Behind the velvet curtains, Madonna stood still for a moment, fingertips grazing the spine of the book. She knew she was holding something volatile, something that would set the world on fire, and she didn't flinch. As pages turned and images flashed across the screens, the room froze. Gasps slipped through the audience. Some stared in awe, others recoiled. Within minutes, the phones of publicists began ringing, newspapers demanding statements, broadcasters preparing segments, politicians scheduling condemnations. The air thickened with judgment. Outside, crowds doubled, then tripled. Inside her hotel suite later that night, the noise continued. Televisions roaring with outrage, headlines forming in real time, calls coming in from every direction. And yet, in the quiet between the chaos, she sat on the edge of her bed, the soft bedside lamp casting a warm glow over the polished floor. She watched the city through the window, the flickering lights, the moving shadows, and understood the gravity of what she had unleashed. This wasn't just controversy. This was cultural rupture. Her fortune, already immense, would grow. Her influence, already global, would deepen. But her image, once merely provocative, would now become untouchable, a symbol of defiance etched in scandal. And beneath it all, a question lingered in the dim light. Why does truth wrapped in art terrify the world more than any lie ever could? 5. The scandal did not end with the flash of cameras that night. It expanded, slowly at first, then with a force that consumed every corner of Madonna's life. The world was not ready for the woman she chose to be in 1992, and in the days that followed, the backlash thickened like smoke in a sealed room. Newspapers filled their front pages with condemnation. Television hosts dissected her intentions with a mixture of fascination and contempt. Religious groups protested outside music stores. Politicians called her a danger to youth. For the first time in her career, the noise felt different. It wasn't just criticism, it was punishment. Yet inside her townhouse, the atmosphere contrasted starkly with the chaos outside. The lights were dimmed, as though the rooms themselves were bracing for impact. Manuscripts lay scattered on the wooden table. The first copies of the sex book sat stacked on the floor like forbidden relics. Assistants whispered in the hallways. Phones rang endlessly, and in the middle of it all, Madonna remained still, contemplative, resolute, almost disturbingly calm. Her fortune during this era was estimated at over $80 million, an empire built through music, film, endorsements, and relentless reinvention. But money could not buy acceptance, nor silence the accusations pouring toward her with unrelenting fury. Record stores pulled her album. Networks banned her videos. Sponsors withdrew contracts. The empire she had built began to tremble. And yet, she refused to apologize. Friends who visited her in those months described a strange atmosphere in the home. Warm, but tense. Quiet, but vibrating with unspoken emotion. As if the walls themselves were witnessing a transformation. In the evenings, she often wandered through the kitchen barefoot, a cup of tea in hand, the city lights flickering through the windows like distant signals. She spoke little. She listened to jazz, classical music, anything that offered a softer world than the one raging beyond her door. And then she would return to her desk, to her notebooks, to her courage, refusing to let the public define her narrative. But beneath her defiant veneer, another truth lived quietly. The scandal had cost her something intangible. Not her fame, not her wealth, but a piece of the trust she once had in the world. She now understood the fragility of admiration, how quickly applause turns into accusation, how easily a woman can be devoured when she refuses to obey the rules written for her. As years passed, the controversy mutated. Some critics softened. Younger generations praised her bravery. Artists cited her as inspiration. But the mystery of those off-camera moments remains. The conversations behind closed doors, the nights she sat alone confronting the storm she had unleashed, the scars she carried long after the world moved on. Her legacy survived. Her fortune grew. Her influence deepened. Yet the questions persisted. What did she sacrifice in those years? What private fears did she bury beneath her resolve? And what parts of herself were forever changed by that one decision? Because scandals fade, but the silence that follows them, the silence inside the home, inside the heart, lingers long after. Cette maison semble encore retenir son souffle, comme si elle gardait les secrets d'une femme qui a refusé de se taire. 6. In the end, Madonna's most controversial moment did not destroy her. It revealed her. It stripped away the illusion of invincibility and exposed the raw, unpolished truth beneath the crown she had carried for so long. Behind the scandal, behind the outrage, behind the noise, stood a woman who refused to live within the boundaries others drew for her. And in that refusal, she discovered a kind of freedom even fame could not offer. History softened. Critics rewrote their judgments. A new generation looked back and saw not a villain, but a pioneer. What once ignited fury became a blueprint for artistic courage. And the woman who had been dragged through headlines emerged not as a relic of controversy, but as the architect of her own identity. A reminder that art is meant to disturb, to question, to force society to confront the boundaries it tries to pretend don't exist. Today, the echoes of that night still linger. Not with shame, not with regret, but with a quiet triumph. Madonna's net worth now soars past hundreds of millions, yet her greatest legacy is not the fortune she built. It is the fearlessness she embodied. The price she paid in 1992 became the foundation on which countless others now stand. So what remains of the moment the world tried to silence her? A myth? A warning? A lesson carved from fire? Or perhaps simply this: le vrai héritage n'est pas ce qu'on possède, mais ce qu'on ose briser. The true legacy is not what we own, but what we dare to break. And in the quiet after the flames died out, one truth endure. Le silence ne tue pas la mémoire, il la purifie. Silence does not kill memory, it purifies it.